Most people misunderstand success because they misunderstand the role their own mind plays in creating it. They think millionaires were handed opportunities they never got, or that wealth is the outcome of extraordinary luck or genius or privilege. And while external factors can play a role, the deeper truth is that everything begins in the mind. Before money shows up in someone's bank account, before a business scales, before influence and reputation build, there is a pattern of thought, a set of beliefs, that allows all of it to exist in the first place. Wealth is created twice, once in the imagination and only later in the physical world. That's why training your mind is not optional if you want to live at the level of a millionaire. You can study strategies all day, you can follow financial advice, you can even start businesses. But if your mental operating system is still running on scarcity, on fear, on the quiet conviction that people like me can't have that, then every action you take will be limited. The ceiling you bump into isn't made of circumstance, it's made of your own beliefs. Think about how we're conditioned from the very beginning. Many of us grew up hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy, or you should be grateful for what you have and not want more. These phrases don't sound like much when you hear them as a child, but repeated enough times, they settle into the subconscious as programming. And later, when you try to break out, that programming quietly resists you. You want to take a risk, and a voice in your head says, "That's dangerous." You want to raise your prices, and the voice whispers, "Who are you to ask for that much?" You see someone successful, and instead of being inspired, you feel resentment. That's the mind defending its old operating system. Millionaires are not immune to fear, doubt, or limiting beliefs. The difference is that they learn to challenge them, to question the programming instead of obeying it. They adopt a mindset that assumes possibility rather than limitation. Where most people look at a challenge and see reasons it can't be done, they train themselves to ask, what would have to be true for this to work? That one mental shift, from shutting down ideas to opening possibilities, creates an entirely different trajectory. Psychologists talk about something called confirmation bias. Once you believe something, your brain starts filtering reality to prove it true. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll notice every piece of evidence that reinforces scarcity, and you'll miss the doors that are wide open in front of you. If you believe money is only for other people, you'll subconsciously sabotage yourself to stay aligned with that identity. But if you deliberately choose to believe that opportunities exist everywhere, that wealth is available to you, that you are capable of building it, you'll start to see evidence of that too. The mind is a meaning-making machine, and whatever story you feed it, it will prove right. This is where philosophy meets practicality. If you see the world as fixed, as already determined, you remain trapped. But if you see the world as in flux, as something you co-create with your attention and your decisions, then suddenly you are not a passive observer. You're an active builder. Wealth is not only about dollars. It's about the capacity to see possibility where others see limits. And that's not just a financial truth. It's a human truth. So ask yourself, what beliefs about money and success are you carrying that are not yours? Which ones did you inherit without consent? And more importantly, what is it costing you to keep them? Because every belief you hold either expands your vision or contracts it. Every belief either opens the door or locks it shut before you even try the handle. When you study the great entrepreneurs, creators, or investors, You'll notice they all had a moment where they chose to believe something bigger than their circumstances. They weren't guaranteed success. They acted in the face of doubt. The decision to believe came first. The evidence showed up later. That's the paradox. You don't get to see proof until after you've already chosen the belief. That's why so few people make the leap, because it feels backwards. But the ones who do, the ones who take that leap, end up building realities the rest of the world calls extraordinary. And that's what training your mind is about. It's not about tricking yourself into false confidence. It's about understanding that the beliefs you choose today become the boundaries or the building blocks of your tomorrow. Wealth begins in thought. Possibility begins in thought. Success begins in thought. Everything external is just an echo of the internal. So the question is not, how do I get lucky? The question is, what would happen if I rewired my mind to believe I belong at the table, that abundance is possible for me, that I have the capacity to create wealth? Because the moment you truly believe that, your actions start to align with it. And when your actions align with a bigger belief, reality eventually follows. Remember this, the limits you see are rarely in the world. They're in your mind. Change the belief and the world looks different. Change the story and new possibilities emerge. If you want to think like a millionaire, you don't start with money. You start with possibility. Once you begin to rewire your beliefs and see possibility instead of limitation, the next challenge is translating that vision into consistent action. This is where most people fail. They get the spark, they get inspired, they even sketch out a big plan, but then the momentum fades and they find themselves slipping back into the same patterns. Why? Because possibility without discipline collapses into wishful thinking. It's not enough to believe you can achieve wealth. You have to train your mind to consistently act in alignment with that belief. And that training comes down to one word: discipline. Now, let's clear something up. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not about beating yourself up or forcing yourself into a rigid life you hate. Discipline is freedom disguised as structure. It's the capacity to do what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. Millionaires don't rely on inspiration every morning. They don't wait for motivation to show up. They design systems and habits that move them forward, whether their mood is on board or not. And that's why they win. The human brain is wired to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. Psychologists call it the pleasure principle. Left to its default, the mind will always try to conserve energy, seek short-term gratification, and resist anything that feels hard. That's why scrolling through social media is easier than making a sales call. That's why binging a series feels more appealing than reading a business book or working on your craft. But here's the truth. The very things your mind resists are usually the exact things that build the foundation of success. Mental discipline means you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" and instead start asking, "Does this align with the vision I've committed to?" Because the moment you tie your actions to feelings, you're at the mercy of moods and impulses. But when you tie your actions to a vision, you elevate your behavior beyond emotion. That's how millionaires operate. They act out of alignment, not out of convenience. Philosophically, discipline is about sovereignty. It's about becoming the ruler of your own impulses instead of a servant to them. Every act of discipline strengthens the will, and every surrender to distraction weakens it. And over time, that cumulative effect determines who you become. Think of it like compound interest, not in money, but in character. The small acts of discipline you repeat every day build into a force that shapes your entire trajectory. This is why habits are so central. Habits are just discipline automated. At first, it's hard. You force yourself to get up earlier, to make the call, to practice the skill. But the more you repeat it, the less energy it takes, until eventually it's automatic. Millionaires aren't superhuman. They just have a collection of habits that keep them moving in the direction of their vision, regardless of how they feel on any given day. Of course, there's a deeper layer to this. Discipline is not only about doing the work, it's also about not doing the wrong work. It's about protecting your focus. The world is noisy. Every day, there are distractions pulling at your attention: emails, notifications, obligations that feel urgent but aren't important. Mental discipline means you learn to say no. You learn to cut out the noise so that your energy is reserved for what actually moves the needle. Without that kind of discipline, you can stay busy your entire life and never get anywhere meaningful. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Discipline often feels like sacrifice. Waking up early feels like a loss of comfort. Turning down a night out to invest in your project feels like missing out. Saying no to a distraction feels like depriving yourself of something easy and pleasurable. But here's the paradox. Those sacrifices compound into freedom. The discipline that feels restrictive today is what creates options tomorrow. The millionaire mindset accepts temporary discomfort for long-term power. If you look at any self-made success story, you'll see a trail of disciplined decisions behind it. The author who wrote a book one page at a time, day after day. The investor who studied markets long before anyone else was paying attention. The athlete who trained in the dark when nobody was watching. None of them relied on motivation alone. They built a rhythm of discipline that carried them through the days they didn't feel like showing up. So the question becomes, can you trust yourself to follow through? That's really what discipline is, a deep trust in your own word. When you say you're going to do something, do you do it? Or do you break promises to yourself and then wonder why your confidence erodes? Confidence doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you collect evidence that you are reliable, that you are capable. And that, more than anything, builds the kind of inner strength millionaires operate from. Training your mind in discipline isn't glamorous. It's not fireworks or instant breakthroughs. It's slow, it's repetitive, it's often boring, but it's also transformative. Because once you master discipline, you can apply it to anything. Your health, your relationships, your finances, your growth. It becomes the foundation that supports every other part of your life. And this is the point. Success doesn't belong to the most talented or the most intelligent. It belongs to the most disciplined. The people who can train their minds to act consistently, regardless of mood or circumstance, are the ones who eventually create extraordinary results. So remember this. Discipline is the bridge between belief and reality. You can rewire your mind to see possibility, but without the discipline to act on it, it remains an idea. With discipline, that idea becomes a future. Once you've built the belief system and the discipline to act, the next test always comes in the form of resistance. Life has a way of throwing obstacles in front of anyone who dares to grow. You'll face setbacks, failures, rejections, delays, unexpected losses. And the truth is, most people interpret these moments as signs they should stop. as confirmation that their original doubts were right. They take one hit and instead of recalibrating, they retreat, but the way millionaires think is different. They don't experience fewer failures, they reinterpret failure itself. The average person sees a setback as punishment. The millionaire mind sees it as information. That difference in interpretation is everything. One mindset collapses at the first sign of resistance. The other adapts, learns, and uses the resistance as a training ground. It's not that the obstacles disappear, it's that the meaning assigned to them changes. Psychology tells us that humans are meaning-making creatures. We don't respond to events themselves. We respond to the meaning we attach to those events. Two people can experience the exact same rejection. One calls it proof they're unworthy. The other calls it a lesson in refining their approach. The rejection is identical, but the story told about it is radically different, and it's the story that determines the outcome. This is where resilience becomes more than just a motivational slogan. Resilience is a skill of perspective. It's the ability to zoom out, to take the long view, and to ask, what is this experience teaching me that I couldn't have learned any other way? Millionaires don't just bounce back from setbacks. They extract lessons that sharpen their strategy. They look at what went wrong, they adjust their systems, and they re-enter the game with more clarity than they had before. Think of it like training a muscle. If you never add weight, the muscle doesn't grow. If you only lift what's comfortable, you stay at the same level forever. Setbacks are the extra weight. They are the resistance that forces you to expand your capacity. Without them, you don't grow strong enough to handle success at scale. This is the irony, the very thing most people try to avoid. Failure is the very thing that prepares you for the responsibility and complexity of wealth. Philosophically, this is tied to the idea of antifragility. Some things break under pressure. Some things resist pressure and stay the same, but antifragile systems actually grow stronger under stress. Millionaire minds are antifragile. They've trained themselves to treat adversity as fuel. Every failure is absorbed into their framework, making them harder to stop the next time, and over years, this mindset creates an unstoppable momentum. But let's make this practical. Imagine you launch a project and it flops. Most people shut it down, embarrassed, and swear never to try again. A disciplined mind, however, will ask better questions. Was the idea wrong, or was the timing off? Was the market uninterested, or was the messaging unclear? Was the execution poor, or did you simply underestimate the resources required? Instead of labeling it as failure, they break it down into data points. And from those data points, they make the next move sharper. That's how strategic growth works. It's not avoiding setbacks, it's engineering wisdom out of them. Of course, there's an emotional dimension too. Setbacks hurt. They bruise the ego, they stir doubt, they can feel humiliating. But millionaires learn to regulate their emotions instead of letting emotions dictate their decisions. They feel the sting, but they don't live in it. They give themselves permission to process the disappointment, but then they step back into the arena with new clarity. That's a mental habit, refusing to let a temporary defeat become a permanent identity. The deeper question, though, is this. Do you trust yourself enough to walk through failure without abandoning yourself? Because setbacks don't just test your strategy, they test yourself. Concept. They ask, who are you when things don't go your way? Do you shrink back into the comfort of old beliefs, or do you stand firm in the identity you're building? Millionaires train their minds to hold vision steady even when results are delayed. That's what separates them from those who quit too early. So, if you want to think like a millionaire, you have to rewire how you define loss. Stop asking, did I succeed or fail? And start asking, what did I learn that makes me more prepared for the next round? Because that shift alone will keep you in the game long enough to win. Most people don't lose because they lack potential. They lose because they exit the process before their breakthrough arrives. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson about setbacks. They aren't the enemy, they're the curriculum. They're how the universe, or life, or whatever you want to call it, prepares you for the weight of what you've been asking for. If you reframe setbacks as part of the training, you stop resenting them and start using them. And the moment you start using them, you turn what others see as obstacles into your competitive advantage. So remember this, failure is not final and it's not fatal. It's feedback. The only true failure is refusing to learn. Everything else is growth in disguise. Belief builds the foundation. Discipline sustains the structure. Resilience turns setbacks into stepping stones. But even with those in place, there's one more element that transforms the millionaire mind into something unstoppable: the ability to create a vision, make decisive choices, and execute consistently at scale. Because wealth doesn't just come from working hard. It comes from working hard on the right things, in the right direction, with unwavering clarity. Think of vision as your internal compass. Without it, discipline becomes routine without meaning, and resilience becomes aimless endurance. Vision gives you direction. It answers the question, why does this matter? What is the life you're actually building toward? Most people never stop long enough to articulate a vision. They're caught in survival mode, paying bills, getting through the week, chasing distractions. They mistake busyness for progress. But millionaires think differently. They zoom out. They define the life they want, the impact they intend to make, the values they refuse to compromise. That clarity becomes their North Star. Philosophically, vision is about orientation. It places you in a larger context, reminding you that life is not a series of disconnected events, but a narrative you are co-writing. And if you don't consciously write it, someone else will. Your employer, your culture, your circumstances. The millionaire mindset refuses to outsource vision. They take ownership of the story they're living in. But vision without decision is still just imagination. The mind has to make choices clear, sometimes uncomfortable choices, that align action with vision. And here's the challenge. Indecision is the quiet killer of potential. Most people don't fail because they chose wrong. They fail because they never chose at all. They wait, they hesitate, they analyze endlessly, and in the process, opportunities pass them by. Millionaires, on the other hand, cultivate decisiveness. They understand that a good decision executed today is often more valuable than a perfect decision postponed indefinitely. That doesn't mean they're reckless. It means they trust their ability to adapt. They decide, they commit, and if adjustments are needed, they make them. But the act of deciding itself is what generates momentum. Psychologically, decisions close the loop of mental energy. Instead of burning bandwidth on what-ifs, your mind is freed to focus entirely on execution. That shift alone can be the difference between years of stagnation and rapid progress. And then comes execution, the most underestimated part of success. Ideas are cheap. Everyone has them. Execution is what separates the dreamers from the doers. Millionaires don't just act once. They act repeatedly, systematically, and at scale. They build processes, they delegate, they automate. They think beyond one win, they design systems that multiply wins over time. This is where discipline merges with strategy. Execution is discipline applied to vision, but here's the deeper layer. Execution requires you to value progress over perfection. Many people sabotage themselves because they want everything to be flawless before they act. They wait for certainty, for ideal conditions. But millionaires understand that conditions are rarely ideal. They launch, they test, they iterate. They learn in motion. That willingness to execute imperfectly is what allows them to move faster than everyone else. Scaling execution is also about leverage. The millionaire mind asks, how can I get this done through systems, through people, through resources, instead of only through my own effort? This is where wealth multiplies. One person working alone can only achieve so much. But a person with vision and discipline who knows how to delegate, how to partner, how to build scalable processes, that person creates impact and wealth that extend far beyond their individual capacity. And it's worth saying, execution at scale is not just about business. It's about how you live. It's about aligning your choices and actions so that every part of your life, your health, your relationships, your finances supports the vision you've committed to. Millionaires don't compartmentalize success, they integrate it. They understand that fragmented action creates fragmented results. Execution at scale means designing a life where everything feeds into everything else. So let's bring this together. Belief gives you the permission to dream. Discipline trains you to act consistently. Resilience transforms obstacles into resources. And vision, decision, and execution tie it all together into a life that compounds toward wealth and fulfillment. This is not magic. It's not reserved for a chosen few. It's a framework for how the mind can be trained, step by step, to produce extraordinary results. The real question is, will you commit to training your mind this way? Because at some point, it's not about hearing these ideas, it's about embodying them. Vision without decision fades. Decision without execution stalls. Execution without discipline collapses. And all of it without resilience crumbles under pressure. But together, these elements form a mindset that not only creates wealth, but sustains it. So here's the thought I'll leave you with. Success is not given, it's built, and the blueprint is already in your hands. The moment you choose to align belief, discipline, resilience, and vision with decisive execution, you stop waiting for life to happen. You start building it.